exciting show for you today. Lots of news going on around the NHL this week, and since our last show, if we look at the NHL standings as the season is getting past the halfway marker, so right around there. This, of course, shortened 56 game schedule, so the halfway mark of the season, about 28 games, and look across the league. Some teams have played already more than 28 games. The Islanders, for example, first place in their division, first place in the entire NHL now. The Islanders, 42 points. First place for the Islanders. They have played 29 games. Carolina in first place in the Central at 41 games. Carolina, their most historic start in team history. The first time they have ever been the first team to 20 wins in the league in Hurricanes history. And they, of course, are in a division with the kind of consensus best team in the league, Tampa Bay, who is 1 point behind them, having played one more game. So the Hurricanes, on top of the Lightning here, about halfway through the season. Then, of course, we look in the North Division, the Scotia North Division with Canadian teams. The Leafs kind of were running away with the division at this point last week. And now they're only 4 points up on Winnipeg. Winnipeg jumping with going 7-2-1 in their last 10, jumping up to second place in the division. And they are now just 4 points behind the Leafs. Edmonton also at 36 points, tied there with Winnipeg. They played 3 more games, though. Winnipeg only 4 points behind the Leafs with 3 games in hand, which is huge. So they would have obviously 6 points, the chance to make up 6 points in those 3 games. And they're only 4 points back from the Leafs, and even bigger, possibly, the Jets taking 5 out of 6 points from the Leafs this week. So getting 2 wins in regulation, and then an overtime win, or then an overtime loss for the Jets. So that's kind of launched them back into the discussion for the division lead. As the Jets 7-2-1 in their last 10, the Leafs just a mediocre 5-5 on a 2-game losing streak. And oddly enough, in this division, so the Jets have won 1 game straight, but the first place, third place, and fourth place teams all have a losing streak, whereas the 5th place, 6th place, and 7th place teams all have a winning streak, including the Senators, just absolutely dominating the Leafs last night. The first ever win in the NHL on a surprise start from Arizona State product Joey Dackard. In the West Division, the Golden Knights, 37 points. First place in that division. They've been very hot as of late, 8-2 in their last 10. But they're just 2 points up on Minnesota. And as I've said every week, it was kind of assumed that this division 1, 2, and 3 in some order would be Vegas, Colorado, St. Louis, and then Minnesota, Arizona, and maybe a couple California teams fighting for that last spot. Minnesota launching themselves into the conversation for winning the division. Now, I don't think they'll sustain this the rest of the season. Of course, they still have, as I said, about half the season to go. I don't think they'll sustain this. They will probably fall back into the 3rd or 4th spot. I think Minnesota will make the playoffs, though. They are pretty clearly the 4th best team in the top 4 in this division. But St. Louis, who has not been playing great over really the past 2 weeks or so, they've been the worst home ice team in the league, 4-7-3 on home ice, which is even worse than Ottawa, for example. But 4-7-3 in the last 10, although 10-2-2 on the road. So St. Louis comfortably still ahead of LA right now, about 5 points, which is not a whole lot, and by no means are they running away with anything. But it's a bit of a bigger gap than the 1 point they are behind Colorado, who's 1 point behind Minnesota, the 2 points behind Vegas, and in other divisions, the difference between 4 and 5, like in the North Division, is 31-29 points between Montreal and Calgary. But the Blues are going to need to keep it together if they're going to try and make a run at the division. Across the NHL this week, been a couple cancellations. Obviously, we know about the COVID cancellations, but actually tonight, the Kings and Blues are supposed to play each other in Los Angeles. The Blues are there. St. Louis has showed up. The Kings have not been able to get home from Colorado due to the extensive weather that has been pounding the Colorado and Denver areas. 4 feet of snow there. So the Kings and Blues canceled for a non-COVID issue, but just weather. So hopefully you're going to be able to make that one up as soon as possible. Other NHL news: Jake Gardner being put on waivers by the Carolina Hurricanes. They were just trying to assign him. So waivers for Jake Gardner from Carolina, but it was a bit of a specific situation, as they were just trying to assign him to the minors, and they were just working their way around that. Coming around the NHL as well, Kirill Kaprizov still the leader for Calder Trophy discussion. He's been dominating, really heavily for Minnesota. Minnesota, as we just said, up in that Pacific Division, they've been fighting for the division lead, which is shocking. No one saw that coming. Really, as I said, it was just Vegas, Colorado, St. Louis. Maybe Minnesota will make it, probably bounce to the first round in 5 or something. But they have stayed very consistent all year. Kirill Kaprizov leading the team in points. He's the only player with over 20 points. He's got 24. Kirill Kaprizov, and if you look at rookies, I mean, I've never seen something so glaring with rookies on a team. Kirill Kaprizov with 24 points. The rookie with the next highest point total on the team, Nico Sturm, with 5. So Kirill Kaprizov, hands down, the most valuable player on the Wild, and probably the most valuable rookie across the league. Really, he's on the nickname Kirill the Thrill. It's kind of a hard name to rhyme with, but they were able to, and I think he's pretty much running away with the Calder Trophy at this point. I think of any award, that is the most glaring as to who should win it. And if we compare him with rookies from across the league, his 24 points, 8 better than Tim Stützle, who's also having a great year. Tim Stützle, probably the best player from this past draft at this point. Josh Norris, 15 points, so 2 out of the top 3 from Ottawa. Jason Robertson in Dallas with 13 points. Obviously a pretty crazy year to be a rookie, given their last year of development last year, all the junior and minor leagues being affected by COVID. But I guess that is given the circumstances, Kirill Kaprizov being very impressive. 24 points for him, and additionally he leads rookies in goals too with 10 points. Leads in goals, assists, and points overall. So really just dominance from him. Also, unfortunate news from around the league. Anders Lee, the captain of the first place New York Islanders, has been put on long-term injured reserve. There's not been word on what the injury was, but we know it's his right leg. It looks like it could have been a fracture, a break of his right leg. Obviously, terrible news for the Islanders. So Anders Lee out for the season at this point with or at least long-term injured reserve. It seems very unlikely he would return this season, probably out for the season with that leg injury. The Isles still though in first place in the division. Last night, playing their first game post Anders Lee and able to beat the New Jersey Devils in a shootout. So picked up 2 points in their first game without him, but they're going to need to kind of persevere around being without their captain, Anders Lee. Jake Gardner Jack Johnson and David Backes also placed on waivers by the Rangers and Ducks, in addition to Jake Gardner. And another injury from around the league, Ben Chariot in Montreal will be out for about 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe equally as shocking as the Hurricanes being on top of the Lightning in the crazy Central Division is the Florida Panthers, tied with the Lightning with 40 points. So the Panthers are just 1 point back to the division lead of Carolina. So 1, 2, and 3 going 41, 40, 40. Carolina, Tampa, Florida, and the 3 of those teams are all separating themselves pretty easily from Chicago, who is still in the playoff spot in the 4th spot, but they're way back at 33 points. So Florida with 40 points, they're tied with Tampa, just 1 point behind Carolina, 2 points behind the Islanders, tied with Toronto. Who would have thought that Carolina would be ahead of Toronto this point in the year, and Tampa. Carolina would be ahead of Toronto and Tampa. Florida would be tied with Toronto and Tampa. But also the West Division, which was supposed to have 3 of the best teams in the league in Vegas, Colorado, St. Louis, way behind. The Vegas leads the division at 37 points. So they're 3 points behind teams like Florida, Toronto, Tampa as well. We're on the NHL today. Today, a bunch of games around the league. Nearly every team is playing over these next today or tomorrow. Today, the Predators and the Lightning. This is actually the biggest favorite underdog matchup from around the NHL to this point throughout the whole season. So the Lightning still getting great looks and still people thinking that they're going to overpower teams like Florida, Carolina in the future. Despite the fact that they are not even in first place in the division right now. And I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility by any means. As we said, the season is only half over. But the Lightning tonight against Nashville, as I said, biggest underdog favorite matchup of the season. It's actually, in all likelihood, odds makers are predicting a 2-goal Lightning win for the Lightning to win it all, minus 335. So about a 85% chance to 90% chance the Lightning win. Predators at plus 250. So tonight, Nashville going to Tampa, Washington going to Buffalo, Philadelphia at Madison Square Garden to play the Rangers, Chicago and Florida in Florida. Chicago's really going to need this win to solidify their playoff spot and keep going in that fourth spot. The Bruins and the Penguins, Vancouver and Ottawa, Montreal and Winnipeg, Oilers and Flames, the Battle of Alberta. That will be a very, very good matchup as the Calgary Flames have been falling a little bit out of playoff contention, just a little bit. Obviously, still only 1 point ahead of Vancouver, plenty ahead of Ottawa, but they are 2 behind Montreal for that fifth spot. They have won 2 straight to this point, and they still remain 7 points behind their cross-provincial rivals, the Edmonton Oilers. Also, the scores later. Also, game later today, the Sharks and Knights. The Sharks not having a great year at all, but they've been a tough test for everyone. They just beat the Ducks 6-0. Beat the Blues last week. The Sharks have been a tough test, and the Knights will have their hands full. This, of course, bit of a rivalry, even though the Sharks haven't been very good due to that 7-game series a couple years ago, with the Knights and the Sharks ending after the Knights blew a 4-goal lead. And the Sharks came back to win in overtime on that goal by Barclay Goodrow. So always animosity between these two teams. Also traded coaches after that season. Pete DeBoer going from San Jose to Vegas. And Gerard Gallant going from Vegas to San Jose. Blues and Kings, as we said, supposed to be tonight. That game has not been rescheduled, but it will be postponed. And they will make up that Blues Kings game to this point. But if we look at the games played by different teams across the league, they've stayed pretty consistent. Some teams obviously have had to play less for various reasons, like Dallas starting the season with COVID issues. They've only played 24 games, but pretty much around the league, most teams have played 25, like Philadelphia, New Jersey have played 25, Boston as well. Some teams have played a little bit more. Like in the North Division, there's been the fewest COVID issues of any division. Half the division has played 30 games, with Vancouver and Ottawa 31, Edmonton, Toronto 30, Calgary 28, Montreal and Winnipeg 27. So pretty consistent around the league. What you don't want is one team having played 35 games, one team having played 25 games, which hasn't happened. The West Division, every single team's played between 25 and 28. And especially with with games being played only in the division, that is kind of the best outcome, is that teams within their division stay pretty similar and kind of disregard the other division because you're not going to get everything perfect anyway. Also, news from around the league as well. The Bruins practicing tonight with a full lineup, first time in a while. So the Bruins Penguins tonight. That'll be a big test for Boston and Pittsburgh, as Pittsburgh is trying to climb higher and catch Washington in the playoff race. But that's all the news we have for this week. The NHL Low Down will be back in 2 weeks. We'll not have a show next week, but we'll be back in 2 weeks for another episode here on Spanglish Sports World. My name is Jeremy Schooler. Thank you for watching on Spanglish Sports and Zingo TV. We'll see you in 2 weeks.